Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So, a lot of you guys responded extremely positively to my video on Friday where I talked about budgeting a little bit and figuring out my why. I will leave a link to that in case you haven't watched it already. But a bunch of you guys actually said that you wanted to see sort of like the nitty gritty of budgeting a little bit, either to help out your own budget. I know personally I like watching and seeing other people's budgets because it can always help give you some insight into your own budgeting, or if you've never done it before, maybe you just need a place to start. A couple of things before I start with what you see on the screen. First of all, I started off using an Excel spreadsheet, but I moved on to using You Need a Budget. I will have a link to that website down in the description as well. You Need a Budget is not, it used to be an application you download to your computer. Now it's completely online and it's fantastic, but it does cost 40 or $50 a year, 40 to $50 a year, something along those lines. I think it's completely worth the purchase, but I always want to give people the free option first and foremost in case they don't have the means to be able to afford that yearly subscription. But I did want to be upfront and say that You Need a Budget is what I personally use now, and I think it's even better than an Excel spreadsheet, but that's just me. Secondly, the very first step of budgeting is to one, know exactly what is coming into your bank account. So that's knowing how much you make, whether that's just a single job that you have or any other sources of income that you have. And then the second is to know exactly where your money is going afterwards. And that's the part that people usually have trouble with. The book that I read before budgeting was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, which I definitely recommend. That he has this thing called the 7 baby steps, and you can Google it if you're interested. I believe the whole like audiobook is available on YouTube as well, so you could always just listen to the whole thing. It'll probably take you like 2 hours. It's really short, but he has this thing called the 7 baby steps, and I'm following that as well. He's very anti-debt. Outside of like a mortgage, he doesn't believe in any sort of debt whatsoever. So if you have credit card debt, car debt, student loan debt, he believes you should get rid of it as fast as you possibly can, which personally I did. But it also helps you figure out what your priorities should be. A lot of times people get really overwhelmed with all of the options that they have. They wonder if they should contribute to retirement more, or if they should contribute to paying off their debts more, if they should contribute to paying off their house more, or if they have kids, they want to put some money aside for them. So it can get to be a little bit overwhelming, and I like Dave Ramsey's plan because he gives you a very specific step-by-step method to figuring out what your priorities should be. I know he's not for everyone, and there are a bunch of different financial people out there who give different advice, but I recommend checking him out because that's what I found to be the most helpful. So anyways, budgeting. So this is basically what my budget looked like before I moved to You Need a Budget. Something else I will say is I have made this spreadsheet public, so I created a blank version of this so you guys can go in. There's a link in the description to this as well. You can go in, open this in Google Drive, and if you go File, make a copy, you can make a copy of this to your own Google Drive, and then you can make it editable and play around with it and make this your own budget if you like how it looks. What we have here is at the top we have income sources. This will vary depending on who you are and what your income sources are. I have it so it's like my main job, side hustle, which was mainly just Book Riot, supplemental income. This would be anything extra that you have coming in that you might not expect. I use this mostly because my sisters and I split a Spotify family plan, and I pay the whole bill, and they just like send me money electronically for the bill every month. So I sort of just put that in supplemental. Sinking fund is something I will get to in a moment if you've never heard that phrase before, but basically any money I took out of my sinking funds I would put into this line item, and then remaining would be what's left over in my bank account at the end of the previous month. Then we have regular expenses. This again will vary depending on what your life is like. Spotify. And then transportation, I consider transportation to be gas for my car, as well as like parking fees if I like go into the city and I park in a parking garage, or like if I'm in the city and I'm using my train pass, like paying for the pass, things like that. Food, and that I have as like eating out money as well as grocery money. Some people break those out. I personally didn't, but do whatever works for you. Then I set up debt. I just had 4 lines in here, and these are just since this is a public version, I just made this as an example. Okay, so sinking funds. Sinking funds is just a fancy way of saying sort of like savings accounts, but these are savings accounts with a specific purpose. So examples of sinking funds that I've had is a Christmas sinking fund. So every month I would set aside around $25. So that way when like November and December rolled around, I had a good like $200 to $300 put away for Christmas that I could use to spend on people's presents. I highly recommend doing this because then you aren't crazy overwhelmed when those big purchases happen, especially if you know they are definitely going to happen. Like you definitely know Christmas is a thing that's going to come up if you're someone who celebrates Christmas. So having the money already set aside is great, and it makes it easier to handle because you're doing sort of like small increments every single month as opposed to just these huge purchases at the end of the year. Another one is a car fund. This is different than transportation because this is things like oil changes or any maintenance that might come up. And obviously for this, like you don't necessarily have a set amount that you're going to need, but you can sort of estimate it. You need a certain amount of oil changes every year, possibly like 3 to 4, depending on how much you drive. And you should have an estimate for how much those things cost you. You should know if you have any sort of like car registration fees you have to pay annually. I put that in there for me as well. So I sort of estimated how much those things cost me every year, and then I divided it over 12 months. And then I put a little bit more than that into my car fund. So that way, if anything major happens, like last year, I had to get my rotors replaced. And so I already had a good like $300, $200 to $300 in my car fund, which covered almost all of it. I still had to pay a little bit more, but that's fine. That's what emergency savings funds are for. Gifts, I use this as money I set aside every month to spend on either gifts for like my nieces and nephews that happen throughout the year, or if like we're going out to eat for my friends, that would go into gifts as well, because that's sort of like extraneous circumstances. Like I feel like going out to eat with my friends is sort of like my gift to them, is like we're spending time together, and we usually end up treating them. Savings, again, you should have an emergency savings account. As I've mentioned in the previous video, charitable giving was always really important to me, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to give as much to charity when I was in debt, but I still put aside a little bit of money every month, so that way when big things happened and I wanted to give, I at least had something. Fun money. This was for me things like going to concerts, going to see Hamilton, which I did this year, any sort of like activities. If I went to museums and they had a cost, it would go into fun money. Clothing, same thing, just putting aside a little bit of money every month. It's not like I bought clothes every month. I would just put aside like $10 every month, so that way when I needed to, say, replace my dress pants because there was a giant hole in them and I needed a new pair of dress pants for work, I had, like $30, $40 already set aside, and I didn't have to worry about that. This is one I didn't change, but I will change that now. New York City was my vacation fund, and I just titled it specifically New York City. So yeah, a vacation fund, if you are someone who plans on going on any vacations, it's nice if you're already putting aside like $20 a month. When something comes up, you can have a little bit of a vacation fund. And then there's a miscellaneous section. For me, these were a couple of things. Target, I gave myself a Target allowance, which sounds kind of insane, but it's also fantastic because it forced me to be strict on how much I spent at Target, but it still allowed me to go to Target. A Lush allowance. This I sort of treated like a sinking fund more than an allowance, because Lush can be kind of expensive and I use their products pretty regularly, and there's certain products that I basically just replace. I'm not always buying new products, but if I had a little bit of extra money, I would put it towards Lush. And then a general miscellaneous fund, which I will get to in a second, but that's just what it sounds like. And I left a couple of extra lines in there just in case there's anything else that you guys know that you have expenses. So that is basically how you start and you set up a budget. You just need to go through your expenses and figure out what bills are you paying and what are you spending your money on. If you are one of those people who's just starting out and you're like, I have no idea where my money goes, go to your previous bank statements. If you use a debit card or you use a credit card, go to those statements, see where your money is going. If you have things that are just like Target and you don't know what Target means, just put that down and do your best to estimate. If you are one of those people who like buys their groceries as well as their toiletries as well as other things like all in one location, it might be harder to sort of estimate. But what you need to do is get an idea of where your money is going. Some of these will be easier than others. Obviously, like Netflix is a set amount. Your cell phone bill is probably a set amount. So those things will be able to fill out easily in the spreadsheet. Other things take some time and a little bit of digging. If you are feeling really ambitious, the best way to do this is to go back through 3 months worth of statements. 3 to 6 months is what I would say. That way you get a better understanding of where your money is going. But if you are just so overwhelmed, you could just go to last month's, like last full month's statement, and see where your money is going and just use that as an estimate. And as a reminder to anyone who's just starting out, it takes about 3 months for you to get your budget right. Things are going to happen and things are going to come up, and you are going to realize eventually that, oh crap, I should have had a sinking fund for this, or I am going to start a sinking fund now because I know it's going to happen again next year. Oh, if you have like a pet or something, you might want to set aside money for them if they have like vet visits or food that you need to buy for them on a regular basis, things like that. You'll probably want money for that. Some people I know roll that into their own grocery money. So it's up to you. There's a lot of flexibility with this, and it's all about figuring out what method works best for you. Okay, so and now that you have a full budget worth of stuff written out, we are now going to enter in the numbers part. So like I said, you should have a pretty good estimate into what you're earning and what you are outputting. If your income is extremely variable, it's always better to underestimate your income, so that way if you get more, you can always just put that towards whatever your goal is, or if you need to fill out anything else. If you overestimate and you come under, then that really sucks, because then you have to sort of rework everything and it feels like you're failing. So always underestimate. So I'm going to explain what all of these columns are now. So this is source, so obviously that's the source of either the income or the expense budget. This is what you're going to be filling out prior to the month starting. It's what you estimate to be earning as well as spending throughout the month. Actual is what actually comes in. So as your bills come in and you know what they actually are, as your paychecks come in, put that in this column. And then as you spend money, you put that in this column as well. And then payment is a column that personally I put in, so that way, say I got my cell phone bill in and it was like $110 or whatever. We'll get to all of that part in a second, but I would put in this cell, I would put what the actual bill is, and then once I pay the bill, I will put it in payment, because a lot of times what I do is like I get all of my bills in my email. So as soon as I get a bill, I put it into my spreadsheet, but then I don't necessarily pay my bills until the end of the week. I sort of spend either Friday or Saturday, whatever day I have free, going through and paying all my bills, making sure like everything's cleared that's supposed to clear, or in making sure that nothing's cleared that wasn't supposed to clear. Or if you have like automatic payment set up, sometimes I'll put in what the bill is here, and then once the payment has cleared from my account, I will put that in here just to make sure that everything gets paid. Over under. This column I set up for myself as a way to see whether or not I am over or under on any of my budgeted items. That's pretty simple. As I fill this out, you'll see this start to populate, and that's pretty cool. And then balanced, again, is I use for the difference between actual and payment, so it turns red if I haven't paid it yet or it hasn't cleared yet, so that way it keeps me aware of what needs to still be paid or needs to still be cleared, and I should check on if I haven't already. These are little columns I set up to make it easier for myself to track the things that I spend my most money on, at least in terms of the things I can control. Like obviously I spend more on rent than I do on food. So because food is a single item here, I have a summation formula put in, so it'll add up all of these columns and just put in a single amount here, which is really nice because sometimes it's a pain in the butt to keep track of everything, but every time you spend your money, you should be entering it into your spreadsheet or whatever it is. So say on January 1st, I went to the grocery store. I would probably put in the specific grocery store I went to, but it doesn't really matter for this. And I spent 10, 15. You'll see that it automatically populates in here. And you'll see that I'm over budget because I haven't budgeted anything for the month. And then say I went to McDonald's the same day, and McDonald's, and got myself, I don't know, something. But as you can see, again, it just auto-populates. Same thing with gas. I would probably put like Shell, $10. And then miscellaneous, I have for this miscellaneous line item down here. So say I went to Barnes and Noble. And I bought myself a paperback. You'll see down here, it auto-populates. This is nice because I was getting kind of irritated with putting in like individual line items, especially for like one-time expenses. So I just started like a miscellaneous line item just to make it easier. And I do budget myself a certain amount of miscellaneous money every month just because stuff happens, things happen that I don't think of. So let's make up some imaginary income. So you have about $2,800 to play with. Your cell phone is $100. Obviously, they won't be this even. You will have a general idea, but even if it's a thing where you know, like say your cell phone bill varies a little bit between like $80 and $100, I would always just put the higher end just to be on the safe side again. I have all of these auto-populating again, so as you fill them out, it'll auto-populate. And what you want to try to do is get this final number to be 0. Oh, you know what I forgot to add? Usually I have a rollover account just to make things a little bit easier because there are a couple of things that come out at the first of the month. So I like to have a little bit of a buffer in there. Again, this will all vary depending on how often you get paid. If you're paid bi-weekly on the 15th and 30th of every month, if you're paid monthly, etc., you will have to learn to adjust your budget as need be. Another thing I do is I put these expenses in order of when they come out of my account. Car insurance usually comes out around the 1st or 2nd. Netflix is usually around the 8th or 9th, I think, and so on and so forth. So that's just easier for me because then as bills are coming in, I can just start to enter them here. And as they come out of my account, I will enter them here. It just looks more organized in my opinion. Also, you might notice, if you're wondering, why are these highlighted purple? That's because these are my variable expenses, and it's something that, again, I can control. So it's sort of like what I'm paying attention to the closest. So the way the Dave Ramsey plan works is he does this thing called the debt snowball, where you should pay minimums on everything except for your highest debt. So let's just pretend like credit card, or except for your lowest debt, and you want to put all of your money towards that. And then once that's paid off, you put all of the money you were putting towards the first credit card towards the next debt, and then you keep like snowballing it down. And it's a lot of people like it, including myself, because it's really motivating to see your debts get cut out really quick. But yeah, so this isn't supposed to be this high. You should be at minimums for all of these things. I don't even know. D 50. Okay, and then you fill all of this out. 25. Let's just keep it simple. So a lot of times where people get into trouble is they stop here and they're like, oh, I have like $400 left over in my account. I'm just going to leave that there and then I will just spend the money however I want. But that isn't what you should do. You should put that $400 towards something, whether you have it going towards your highest debt, whether you have that going towards savings. So personally, if this was my spreadsheet, I would be putting it towards debt. So I would go, yeah, so there's like 3 cents left over, which I'm willing to leave 3 cents. I think 3 cents is reasonable. So then what you do is as your payments are coming in, you have to go in and enter everything. So say you got your first paycheck of the month. I usually did it so I did equal 1,000. So that way, when the second paycheck goes in, I can just do plus whatever that one is. I would start paying off whatever I could with this first amount. So let's go 250. Okay, so I'm a little bit over here. So there are 2 ways to do this. Depending on like how your rent comes out, rent is obviously a pretty large expense. So what I personally do is I usually put half of my rent payment out of my first paycheck. So I would do like 250 here. So I could pay more, I would have more money set aside for my bills. And if you're wondering how I'm not doing the math in my head, I'm just watching the total expense down here and getting it as close to 1,000 as possible. When my second paycheck came in, I would put in plus 250 again, and then I would have the full amount for the month. And so you can see this is starting to auto-populate. These are blank because they're equal to what I estimated they would be. And as you can see, these are turning red because this is balanced because I haven't actually paid them yet. Say I got my extra $1,000 and I wanted to change this to 500 to balance it out, and then I actually paid it. I would go like that, and then it clears out, and then I wrote the check to my church and that cleared out. Okay, this video is already really long, so I'm going to try to hurry through the rest of this a little bit. Something I want to point out, let's say that one of your bills comes out higher than you thought it was going to. This part turns red, that way you are aware that you're over. Sinking funds. Okay, so You can do sinking funds a couple of different ways. Some people I know have like a separate spreadsheet where they keep track of all their sinking funds and how much is in them, because there's no way to do that in this actual spreadsheet. Personally, what I just do is I opened up a Capital One 360 account. You can create as many savings accounts as you want with them for no fee. They also have a pretty okay interest rate, especially compared to most brick and mortar banks. So you can create a separate separate savings account for each of these line items to make it easier for yourself. Or if you are doing the cash method where you pull out all of your spending in cash, you could pull out the cash for this and then just have separate envelopes for all of them, and then you just can look and see how much money is in your envelope. So the way I would treat this is I would just, put in how much I'm putting into the sinking funds, and then I would fill out the payment method once I actually transfer the money to that savings account, if that makes sense. With Capital One 360, you can also get a checking account with them, because if you transfer money from like a brick and mortar bank to them, it takes around 3 to 5 business days, depending. And then to transfer it back takes another 3 to 5 business days. So if you need the money immediately, you can open up a checking account with them, and then they can give you like a debit card so you can do those transfers immediately and then spend the money as you need it. If I transferred the money over, this would zero out. So what I would do is I would fill this out throughout the month. I would actually check my spreadsheet literally on a daily basis. I still check YNAB on a daily basis just to make sure that I'm on track. I would say you don't have to be as crazy as me, but you should definitely check in every time you spend any money whatsoever. So let's say you went out to eat, you definitely should go in as soon as possible and put in how much you spent. Keep your receipts for everything. If you're bad at keeping your receipts and you use a debit card, make sure you go into your bank and check and put in the information. Let's say like you made a little bit of extra side hustle money this month. You hustled real hard and you paid all your bills and then you paid your minimums. Okay, so you have about $1,000 left over for the month. Put all of that towards that. So I would go and I'd be like, okay, I have $1,134. I'm going to pay $1,134. And that is basically what I would do every month. A couple of things, whatever your savings goals are, whether it's paying down debt or putting extra towards savings or putting extra towards retirement or whatever, every dollar counts. So don't think that, oh, I just spent $5 at Starbucks. That's not that big of a deal. That actually does make a difference in the long run. A lot of times what I would do is I would try and cut out as much of the little stuff as possible. I would still give myself, as you can see, some spending money so I wouldn't feel overly restricted. Well, I used to have a lot more stuff in the regular expenses. I had subscriptions to a lot of stuff that I ended up canceling, which made me sad when I originally canceled them, but I'm fine. Like, I lived. As you can see, I have no books line item. That would go under miscellaneous generally, but most of the time I didn't plan on buying any books, and if I did, then I would keep it as small as possible. All of those things really, really add up to helping meet your goals. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. This video is really long. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions about this, definitely leave a comment down below and I will try my best to help you out or to explain it better. And like I said, there is a link to this document down in the description so you can open it up and you can play with it yourself. So usually what I would do is before I started the new budget, I would go down to the bottom of the screen. There's no way for you to see this because it's cut off, but you can add tabs. But yeah, I would add a new tab and then I would copy and just like go from A all the way down to S and just copy the whole thing and put it in a new spreadsheet. So I would have a blank one set up for February before I started entering in my numbers. Or if you want to make the budget before before January 1st, and then just copy it over to February, because then you'll have your bills already inputted. It'll make it a lot faster. You can make like 12 of them, and then when you go into and get ready for February, you can go in and check it out and just make sure everything's set. Things that are variable like electricity, you have to pay higher bills in certain months than others unless you have a set rate from your electricity provider, which is possible. Those are just some quick tips and tricks. Hopefully this was helpful. If you've been budgeting, this probably isn't that helpful, but again, there's links to everything I talked about down in the description below. And yeah, if you have any questions, like I said, leave them down in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.